Hi guys, mistakes. We all dread making them. We all try to stay away from them, but at the same time, if we don't make them, we never learn. And this is the message for you today. Keep on making mistakes, because making mistakes is actually making you better. One of the biggest issues, guys, that you face is the fact that when you begin to learn to speak, you need to speak to other people, because speaking English is a social skill, right? We need to be able to practice with other people because we need to be able to have conversations. But one of the biggest issues that you notice is the fact that if you're the beginner and somebody else is a beginner, then aren't you learning each other's mistakes? Aren't you repeating what somebody might have said badly? Or maybe you're making a mistake and you're not noticing it, and consequently you keep on repeating it and you memorize it for good. On one hand, it is true. It is true that we might learn mistakes from other people. On the other hand, it's not true, because in order to learn a mistake from somebody else, we need to repeat it very, very often. It also means that we have no other reference. We don't read books, we don't listen to people who actually speak well on TV or radio. So we don't do anything else apart from having these conversations with individuals who make mistakes in the same way, so you keep on repeating the same mistake. What I would like you to remember is that there are two kinds of mistakes. One kind of mistake is a mistake that you're going to make or you are going to hear when you are having a conversation with someone else. This, in my opinion, is actually a very minor mistake in comparison to the second one. One of the biggest mistakes that all learners make is the one of quitting, is the one of non-action. So we tend to get so scared of not to learn those mistakes that we don't actually enter these conversations, which means we do not practice, and without practice there isn't any progress. Instead of practicing, developing, learning, right, communicating, we quit. And we never progress. Let's just suppose for a moment that we did practice and we made a mistake and somebody else also made a mistake. What's the worst that can actually happen? The worst that can actually happen, really, in this one conversation is the fact that you practiced. That you practiced with somebody whose English might not be perfect, but you did take action. And one of the things that I would like you to notice, one of the very important principles of learning, is the fact that every learning has got stages. When we make mistakes, we make different mistakes at different stages. So when you are beginning to learn to communicate in your first month, you are going to make completely different mistakes than in your third or fifth month. And this is what you need to remember about, is that every stage has got certain mistakes that are going to happen, but they need to happen in order for you to progress. Because once you are progressing through learning and practice and listening and generally developing your language, these mistakes from stage 1 are going to get corrected in stage 2. And the mistakes that you are going to make in stage 2 later will get corrected in stage 3. This is a natural way of progression. We learned to walk in exactly the same way. Before we started to walk, before we started to run, we needed to sit up, we needed to crawl, we needed to take action. We fell, we stood up, and repeated it again and again and again and again until we got it right. And after that, it still took us a while before we could run. So we had to make those mistakes, because this is trial and error, in order to later correct these mistakes and kind of build on them and build and grow from them ourselves. So do remember this when you practice. The most important thing for you is always taking action. Imperfect action is always better than perfect in action. We never get everything perfect at the same time in one go the first time we ever tried. It's not going to happen that you're going to begin to speak English and you're gonna get all the grammar right, all the vocab right, all the stress out right, all the stress right, and all the flow of the sentence right. It never happens, because the only way to learn is through making mistakes and growing from them by keeping on making them. And remember that the person that you practice with, so let's assume that you practice with other individuals who are at the same level as you are. This is only a part of your practice, because this is a practice that comes from your everyday learning. And you do have reference like books, TV, podcasts, anything that you read, anything that you listen. As long as you keep on referencing back to the original language, to the correct versions of the language, then even if you repeat certain mistakes and even if they stay with you for a while, they will eventually get corrected on their own, right? It's just going to happen naturally. All you need to do is to take a deep breath and begin to practice and enjoy it, and enjoy making mistakes, because I know that the more mistakes you make, the faster you're going to learn and the more you're going to actually enjoy the process. So relax, go for it, have fun, enjoy it, and I will see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.